Hello and welcome to this videocast for subscribers to davidicke.com. Been reading a very interesting book this week. It's called Mind Change by a neuroscientist called Susan Greenfield. I made a few page marks there. I'm going to read a bit from it as we go along today because I found it particularly interesting because it so fits with what I've been saying over the years in the books, that it is possible to manipulate the brain of individuals and collectively to decode reality in the way you want. Because as Susan Greenfield talks about in this book, there was a time when it was believed that the brain didn't change, that what you had once the brain had developed is how it was always going to be. Now it's known that is anything but the case because of something they call brain plasticity, which comes from a Greek word meaning to be molded. And that is what is happening all the time with our daily experience, is the brain is being molded to create networks of chemical electrical communication, and that's changing with our experience. And what this book by Susan Greenfield is really focused upon is how the internet, social media, video games and such like is changing the brains of humanity, especially the young, and why that is, I'll come to as we go along. So all the time, as we are having experiences, to put it in computer terms, the brain is downloading data. And from that data, it is changing the way that it communicates and how it communicates and what it communicates with. This is a part of the book, where it's page 55. Here we go. And it's saying that the internal processing of the brain will determine how you see the world, but whatever external inputs are being fed into your brain at any one time, the experience of that very moment will simultaneously change that organization of brain cells and hence your thinking. One leading expert in brain development, Brian Kolb, sums up, anything that changes your brain changes who you will be. No one can be in any doubt, surely, that the internet and social media and video games are changing the brain because of the different information, the different way of working that's brought into human society. He goes on, your brain is not just produced by your genes, it is sculpted by a lifetime of experiences. Experience alters brain activity, which changes gene expression. Any behavioral changes you see reflect alterations in the brain. The opposite is also true. Behavior can change the brain. And so one of the lines that Susan Greenfield uses a lot is use it or lose it. Because the way the brain works, if you stop using part of it, or the networks that at that point have come together, the communication networks, then they fade and they disappear. So you can learn something and carry out that practice, whatever you've learned, and then you stop, and that connection, that network that came together because of what you learned and what you were doing, then starts to unravel. And there's another thing about the brain which it talks about in the book, and that is that it doesn't do vacant space. If it's there, it will be used in some way. And there's a fascinating point she makes, that when people in older days, older life, get cataracts, well, when the cataract's removed, most of the time, it seems, the sight returns. But with children, when they get cataracts, in other words, the part of the brain relating to sight is not being used because of the effect of the cataract, then often children who then have cataracts removed have impaired vision for the rest of their life. And the way she explains it is the brain still changes as we get older, but it changes slower. Older people's brains are much less apt to responding and changing. And we use phrases like they're set in their ways. But the brain does still change, but slowly. Whereas in children and young people, this is very relevant for the social media stuff that we're talking about and the book talks about, it changes fast. And so what's happening with the cataract example is in children, when that part of the brain relating to sight is not used, it uses it for something else. It turns it into another function. Whereas older people, their brains change much slower in that way, and thus when the cataracts are removed, that brain, part of the brain that's been dormant because of it, it's still there as a sight function, because that rapid change that you get in children has not happened. And when you look at the way young people and children now are on the internet, on the social media, do all the video games, the capacity and the potential for their brains to be rewired by that input very quickly is enormous.